All right. Well, hi, hello, and welcome to the webinar. I'm Jess,
And I'm Mackenzie.
and we are about to get into a very exciting webinar with all of you in just a few seconds here. But Mackenzie and I wanted to go through a few of the housekeeping points that we think will help you get the most out of our time here together today. So, Mackenzie, where should we start?
First, I want to draw your attention over to the questions section of your webinar console. This is the best place to get involved, get interactive, post all of your insightful questions, comments, feedback, and ideas. In fact, why don't you find the tab right now and give it a little test run by saying hi, hello, hola, whatever salutation you want to put out to the community today. And as a quick side note, that window is also the best place to reach out and let us know if you have any technical issues during the webinar. Don't forget that a browser refresh should clear up most of the common issues. But if your slides or audio aren't working, feel free just to shoot us a message in the questions tab and our team will be happy to help.
All right, well, the questions tab was a great place to start because the next stop on our guided tour of your audience console is the handouts tab. Do spend some time in the handouts tab. There are so many wonderful resources and takeaways from our conversation here today. You are going to want those to follow up on this, I promise you. So go over to the handouts tab right now, start clicking on those links, download those PDFs, open those tabs, make sure you've got those set aside. Don't go anywhere just yet. Those are for later after we wrap the webinar, because right now you're going to want to stay with us. Not only do we have a very cool webinar coming your way, we also have a prize giveaway that we want you to have in mind, because that is coming at you at the end of our session. So we will have a $250 prize giveaway at the end of our webinar. Now, all winners do need to be here live and present at the webinar, and all winners must meet the prize terms and conditions. Those are linked for you in the handouts tab that we were just chatting about. So you can head on over to the handouts tab, click and scroll down, and you will find the full T's and C's waiting for you there.
Okay, Jess, I think that's everything for the housekeeping. Let's get this webinar rolling.
Let's do it.
Hello, everybody, and welcome. Thank you for joining us today for our discussion, Clarity, Confidence, and Connection for the Independent Worker. My name is Kanoy Namhoy, and I'm the Director of Content for Smart Brief Business Services, and I'm very excited to be here today with all of you. Before we get started, I want to give a quick word of shout out of thanks to our sponsor, VSP Individual Vision Plans. It's important to protect your health so you can handle whatever is ahead of you in your business. So while the journey of an independent worker can be unpredictable at times, your vision coverage is one thing you can control. VSP's individual vision plans are designed with the self-employed in mind, making it easier to buy vision coverage when you need it, how you need it, and at an affordable price. Individual plans are the perfect resource for full-service vision coverage that complements other plans and can even cover many gaps in Medicare plans that may otherwise leave you paying out of pocket unexpectedly for vision needs. Visit vspdirect.com to explore personalized plans. The great news is that your own trusted eye doctor is likely already covered, or you can find a new in-network eye doctor. Plans include an average savings of over $300 per year. Coverage varies depending on the plan selected, but typically it typically includes an annual exam, a generous frame allowance, and lens enhancements like anti-glare and progressive lenses, to name a few. Let VSP help you check one more thing off your busy to-do list and get started today with same-day vision coverage. You can also get more information about VSP by visiting our event resources area and downloading their white papers, Side Hustle to Self-Employed, and Self-Employed and Thriving. Or you can visit them on their social media pages, and we'll have those links for you shortly on our talking points slide. I am very, very excited to introduce our speaker today. With us is Terry Rice, speaker, author, entrepreneur, and business development expert. Terry's experience includes consulting roles at both Adobe and Facebook. In addition to consulting individuals, Terry also advises agencies and leads workshops for various entrepreneurial organizations. So let me give some context to our conversation today. We want to discuss the life of an independent worker. You know, what goes into doing this right and the unexpected differences from working in an office. It's not just about being your own boss and setting your own hours. It takes more stamina, more focus, and a different set of skills to do this successfully, to do this right. So that's where we want to focus our conversation with Terry today, on advice and resources aimed at helping all of you achieve greater clarity, confidence, and connection in your new or your continued ventures. So let's jump into this. I want to start with a quick poll question. Let's start by just kind of taking a pulse on who's here today. Self-employed folks, which title or self-descriptor below feels the most you when it comes to your work? And we can go ahead and push that poll now. Take a second to take a look at your options for the poll and mark your answer. And we'll take a look at the results here in just a few more seconds. Alrighty, let's go ahead and take a look at the results and see what we've got going on here. All right, we've got a mixed bag of folks, but it looks like we're leaning more just on general independent worker. I think we all kind of see ourselves in those different buckets, but right now most are identifying as independent worker. So let's get this conversation started. Start by clarifying in being a successful independent worker. Many take the self to heart, and they think they've got to do in order to make their business successful. But what we know is the most independent workers focus on what they're good at, outsource, or they bring in help for the rest. Let's bring Terry into this conversation and talk about how he manages this. Terry, give us some background on your journey, from traditional self-employment, like.
Yeah, and I'm going to repeat the question just to check for understanding. And first of all, welcome, everyone. I'm glad to have you here. And your question was just my journey from traditional employment to being self-employed, correct? That's correct?
Yes.
All right, awesome. So yeah, I mean, on my end,
Yes.
it was jarring, and I was actually laid off. So I was not planning on being an entrepreneur
Yes, it
whatsoever. It
is.
came as a unexpected surprise. And the first thing I went through was more or less an identity crisis. I mean, I had lost my identity, which was the logo on my resume. So all these tech companies, all these wonderful things I was doing. So that was very challenging. And then beyond that, I had a baby on the way too. So I'm like, great, I have a newborn on the way. I don't have a job, and I'm not really sure what I'm doing. So it was very challenging initially. And I know most people would say, like, if you're planning on quitting your job, save up 9 months of revenue, do all the things right. I did a lot of the things wrong. So for anyone who might be in that position, I got you. I've been there, I understand. And if you're in a better position, this will also help you. So one thing that really pushed me towards not going back to traditional employment was I was actually filing for unemployment. And it just seemed like, I don't know, too many hoops to jump through. It seemed like a demeaning process. I was like, you know what? Keep it. I'm just going to start my own business because I worked as a consultant for years. So I knew that I had the chops to be a consultant. And I was like, I'm just going to do it independently and have more control of my own destiny, as opposed to hoping someone would hire me, hoping I get this unemployment approved, so on and so forth. So that was my journey, but gosh, it was really rough, and that's why I enjoy sharing my journey. Because I know there's other people out there listening right now that also feel the same anxiety, the same worry, the same self-doubt that I
Sure.
had, and I want to help you alleviate that today.
That's quite a bit of that's quite a transition. So I want to take another pause here for another poll. Let's go ahead and push that one. Which of the reasons below motivated those of you in our audience today to become an independent worker? Was it the desire for flexible schedule, setting your own hours? Was it working from home or alone? The opportunity to do your own thing, to have a product of your own, to choose the products or projects you wanted to work on, or pursuing a passion. Let's see where folks are at. Oh, okay. Another mixed bag. All right. Flexibility, working on their own. Okay. Pursuing a passion. Yeah, for sure. But it looks like, most of us desire the ability to work on our own. So Terry, talk about what were some of the biggest challenges you faced in this transition?
Yeah, I
Let's
mean,
start
I
with
think
the
the first
benefits.
one's,
Go ahead. Sorry about that.
yeah,
What were some of the biggest
no, it's
challenges
fine.
you faced?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first one's pretty common. It's pricing your services, right? Because on my end, again, I'm unemployed, I have a kid on the way, so like I'm just underselling myself because I just want to get those yeses. And it's funny because at the time I was also started leading workshops. That's how I started getting clients coming in. And someone approached me afterwards and said, "Hey, what is your rate for consulting?" And once I said the rate, she said, "Wow, you're cheap." And I was just like insulted at her response, but she was true. It was right. So I think that was one of the biggest challenges that I faced initially. And it was also chasing quick fixes. I spent a time and effort on all these shiny objects that I thought would just magically make things better. So I think I wasted some time just not putting in the actual work to build the fundamentals up. And honestly, on mine, it was almost embarrassing because I went to business school. And during business school, I must have wrote like 10 or 15 business plans. When I started my own company, no business plan whatsoever. So I was just like out there trying to make money with no real goals and no real vision either. And I think the vision part's the most important thing because goals are one thing. Goal could be like, to make $1 million. A vision is what are you doing, right? What does it feel like? What are your experiences? How are you known by other people? And when you have that vision, you can just reverse engineer what you need to do to get there because success leaves clues. So those are some things that I struggled with, just not necessarily having a clear vision and a clear understanding of my value. But where I found success, actually what started from failure is I joined the Brooklyn Chamber of Commerce here where I live. And I was just DMing a bunch of people saying, "Hey, can I please help with your digital marketing, so on and so forth," right? Nobody responded, or not too many people responded. But the unlock for me, the huge unlock for me that I want to share today is I then reached back out to the Chamber of Commerce and said, "Hey, can I lead a free workshop for your members on, in my case, digital marketing?" They said yes, promoted me to their list. I showed up to this conference room. There's like 60 people there waiting to hear me talk. And the funny thing is, I know some of them are people that I reached out to because they had very unusual names. And I'm like, okay, great. Now you show up when the Brooklyn Chamber of Commerce reaches out to you. But when I do it, you won't do it. So that was a huge unlock for me in regards to how I could almost easily get clients for my business just by partnering with a third party that already had access to them, providing some kind of value to them as well.
I've got some questions on your pricing things and so forth, but I'll save that for a little bit later, but that's a very intriguing piece. Let's talk quickly about benefits because that tends to be one of the things that that's why they take the 9 to 5. That's why they take those types of jobs. When folks are moving from a traditional 9 to 5 environment, but they now have to seek out alternative forms of benefits. How did you manage that?
Yeah, I mean, I got lucky. Well, I shouldn't say get lucky, but I'm married, so so that was beneficial. I was able to go. Well, I did get lucky. In meeting my wife, but yeah, I was able to tack onto her insurance, which is great. But I worked with a lot of other entrepreneurs who struggled back then to find the right solution for their healthcare, and unfortunately, some of them just neglected doing so, and that caused more anxiety because if you get the sniffles even once, you're like wondering how bad is this going to get. So
Yeah.
I know it is an investment, but it's also not just investment in your physical health, it's an investment in your mental health. Just realizing if something does go wrong, it won't be catastrophic and you can take care of yourself because you can't be the best version of yourself if you're neglecting your health and you're under recovered.
Yeah, that's a practical need. For folks who are just starting out, what kind of advice do you have on how to reduce the growing pains of starting a new business?
Yeah. I mean, I think the first thing is to lean into it and realize like you're not having an identity crisis, but you are having an identity shift. And I don't know anyone that started their business and things were just smooth sailing from the whole time because that's when you really need to leverage that growth mindset that people talk so much about, right? And that involves being uncomfortable. So what I would say is just again realize that success leaves clues, right? So look for other people that have found success in a similar area. You can more or less follow their blueprint. I mean, you want to make augmentations based on what you're doing, but so long as you have a clear path, and James Clear says this in this book, Atomic Habits, you need to be more concerned about your trajectory than your current position. So as long as you're getting better every day, as long as you're waking up, making progress and using intentionality, you will be okay. And I would also say it's really important just to celebrate the small wins. And maybe the small win is, you got 5 pitches out today, you updated your website, whatever it is, because those large wins are sometimes so far down the path that, you can't even see it. And if you just focus on that, you're going to lose motivation as well as inspiration before you get there. So really just celebrate your commitment to the process, not just the outcome, because the outcome might be months away.
You mentioned that, get together with other people or find somebody else who's doing something that is similar to what you're doing and so forth. Are people usually generous about giving advice or sharing insights if they're in a similar business?
It depends. I mean, what I'll say is this. I mean, you can go on platforms that where people like literally say, I'm here for pro bono advice. So in that case, yes, you're good to go. I think if you do reach out to someone for advice, it should be a very well researched question. So instead of saying, how do I get into the digital marketing industry? You could say, hey, I noticed you have a degree in art history, yet you're doing digital marketing. Here's what I learned so far about how to get in this industry. Can you provide any other insights? So that's what I would say is just ask a very intelligent question. And also, if they give you homework, actually do it because it's very frustrating when you give someone advice and they don't take me up on it. So on your end, if you actually follow through and then say, here's what I did, I think people will be more likely to help you. Another thing that's really important to bring up is you don't necessarily need a mentor that you can talk to in real time. Because if you think about it, some people see like Abraham Lincoln as a mentor, right? They never talk to the guy, right? So it's like you can look for all these experts out there, all these pros, and just follow their content, join their newsletter, follow them on social media, listen to their talks. And then as a result of that, you'll learn their track of thinking, even if you never talk to them in real time. So don't feel like that's what's holding you back. I don't have a mentor yet. You can go find a mentor, right? Go read a book, listen to some podcasts, so on and so forth. But yeah, if you do approach most people with a very pointed question that's well researched, you're more likely to get a response.
I like that answer. That really puts the ownership of that venture into your own hands, so that you're not constantly stalling yourself by, I don't have a mentor yet, and you're giving yourself an excuse not to move forward. Let's move on to confidence. Findings from a VSP sponsored study tells us that, conducted by a third party firm, tells us that independent workers are typically happier than folks employed in traditional environments, but they also face new, unique challenges when they're starting their own venture. Let's talk about how we can, bridge this gap and alleviate some of these stressors. Terry, what can you talk about the resources, free or otherwise, that exist for independent workers such as yourself?
Yeah, I want to start with the confidence gap first, then I'll talk about resources. And I learned this approach from a guy named Dr. Michael Gervais, who's a high performance psychologist. And one thing that he brought up is that confidence comes from past experiences, not pep talks or motivational posters. So what I would ask everyone listening to do is to write down 3 challenging things you've done in your career. Maybe it's getting your first job, getting a promotion, dealing with a difficult client, whatever it is. And then what do those give you the right to say about yourself and your ability to execute in a corporate setting? Because again, that anytime you're feeling like, oh man, I'm not even fit to do this stuff, they can look down and say, you know what, I am fit. Here's 3 examples of things that I've already overcome, and they prepared me for more challenges going forward. So that's the first thing I would do, is just level set your confidence, because if you don't have that, all the guides, all the information, all the webinars in the world aren't going to help you, because you still might be thinking, I can't even move forward with this stuff. So that's the first thing I would like to establish. And after that, in regards to resources, you have to have that vision again, right? Like, what do I even want to do? That's when it's going to tell you what you need to learn, because there's a lot of free stuff out there. I mean, go on YouTube. There's so many free resources and videos you can go through to learn things. But what you want to do is practice JIT learning, just in time learning, instead of stockpiling a bunch of information that you may or may not need, right? So the more pointed you are on your self-development in your educational journey, the better you'll do. And again, look for free stuff, right? Go on YouTube, join newsletters, sign up for podcasts, so on and so forth. So often we think, oh, if I pay for this expensive course or this expensive coach, I'm going to get this result, right? Well, no, it feels good when you pay it for it because you're like, I'm committing, but like you still have to apply what you're doing. And one of my favorite quotes by Jim Rohn is, knowledge uninvested in labor is wasted. So what I would say is, go get some free knowledge first, apply it, and then you can backfill it with paid sources. But YouTube, again, podcasts, there's a lot of like free ways to get that information, but just start by thinking, what do you actually want to learn in the first place?
I love Jim Rome. I like that quote. Thank you for that. What I like about where we are today with some of the free resources out there is that they're quality. There are a lot of very, very good podcasts, a lot of very, very good newsletters out there that have practical direction. Do you have favorites? Do you have a favorite podcast that you like to follow?
Yeah, mine. It's called Reclaim in Advance. And what I do is I actually talk to other entrepreneurs who've had big challenges in their life, and they talk about how they overcame them, as well as advice they would give for other people. And then my buddy Jason Pfeiffer has a podcast called Problem Solvers, which is also on the Entrepreneur Magazine Network. I write for Entrepreneur Magazine. mentioned that earlier. And the reason why I like his podcast is because it's not just focused on how-to stuff. It's like, how do you overcome things when they don't work out so well?
Yeah, that's a super important part of this whole process too, and we should touch on that in a bit too. Just how you recover. But for now, what resources did you discover in your transition? And you've already kind of talked about that. What resources did you discover in your transition to self-employment, and were there any you wished you had found sooner?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I would say the most powerful resource was a book. And the book is called Entrepreneurial You by Dory Clark. And the reason why I love that book so much is like it was just a blueprint for how to start my type of business, which is a service-based business. So I just committed to following everything that she said in the book. And literally within months, things turned around. Like it was an incredible switch for me. And I've since bought all her other books, and we're actually now friends too, which is pretty cool. But yeah, the book Entrepreneurial You by Dory Clark was very helpful. And there was another book because like contracts were kind of hard for me too. I was like, I don't know how to do this, right? So there was another book called $1 Million Proposals by Alan Weiss that helped me because that gave me the confidence to go ahead and say, hey, look, here's what I'm doing. Here's how much I charge for it. And the benefit of the contracts that you learn how to create in this book is they're only about a page and a half long, sometimes two. And I feel like sometimes we just keep on like this when we're proposing something, we just keep on typing to hope we like say the right magic words for someone to say yes. But in this case, I was taught how to do it very concisely and get all the details answered on a live call. So again, just to kind of recap here, Entrepreneurial You by Dory Clark and $1 Million Consulting as well as $1 Million Proposals by Ellen Weiss.
Talk about, well, let me ask it this way: what does a system of accountability mean? And have you built your own? Talk about that.
Yeah, well, I mean, let's first talk about why accountability is so important in the first place. There was this great stat by the American Society of Training and Development that revealed that if you have a goal and meet with an accountability partner just once per week, your chance of success goes up by 95%. And I want to repeat that. Your chance of success goes up by 95%. That doesn't mean there's a 95% chance you'll be successful. Those are two different things, right? So don't make it seem like just having this accountability partner is a huge breakthrough. But that's really what it is. I mean, I think it's having goals, defined goals. And what I like to do is what are called OKRs. You might have heard of that before, objectives and key results. And these are normally like a 90-day sprint for a way that you can build your business. So make your accountability partner aware of these OKRs, these goals, and then say, okay, well, here's what I want to do on a weekly basis to meet these goals. So the way that I structure it is, and even with my clients, every Monday you just turn in your goals for the week, right? Your three big goals for the week, first of all, and then what tasks fit under those goals, right? What are the three tasks? And what I also like to do is what I call a post-mortem, right? So a pre-mortem is after a project, you talk about what went wrong. A pre-mortem is when you think, okay, here's my goal. Now, how can I mess this up? Right? Just becoming aware of it in advance and then proactively avoiding those challenges. So maybe it's like taking calls without an agenda. It could be overcommitting, whatever it is. And then on Friday, just looping back and saying, okay, here's what I accomplished. Here's what went right. Here's what went wrong. And another exercise that I like is this called stop, start, continue, change. So based on how the week went, what will I start doing? Will I stop doing, continue doing, and change the way I'm doing? So just having that process built in by stating your goals at the beginning of the week, having this check-in at the end of the week, and then saying stop, start, continue, change, you're set up for continuous improvement and progress.
With this system of accountability, what did you look for in an accountability partner?
I looked for someone who was on the same journey as me. I didn't want to like hire a coach or something like that. I wanted someone who wasn't really coaching me necessarily, but just like holding me accountable and also empathizing. So that's the benefit of an accountability partner is they don't have to be a coach. They can just sit there and listen like, hey, you said you're going to do these three things. Why didn't you do it? And you can kind of pull the answer out of yourself. Or you just know, oh, shoot, I got to talk to this person on Friday. Let me get it done so I don't feel embarrassed. So I just wanted someone who would be accountable for being my accountability partner, if that makes sense. Someone who was really on board with showing up because the worst thing that can happen is you think you can trust in this person and then they kind of flake out. So that's why the reciprocal part made sense, where it's like, I'm your partner and you're my partner as well. So we have that mutually beneficial outcome and both feel comfortable investing their time.
with an accountability partner, is it a good idea or a bad idea to go with a close friend? Or does it kind of matter? Or
I think
family?
it depends on your relationship because I have some friends that would just get on my nerves because they've been nagging me since the '90s about stuff. So maybe not. I know exactly what I'm thinking of. I'm not going to say his name. It depends on your relationship, and you would know better than anyone. Just because you're very close to someone does not mean you want them to be holding you accountable for your work related stuff, right? Maybe they might tell you what outfit to wear, and they're great at that. But in regards to other things, they might not be a good fit. Maybe they'll be too soft on you, right? They're like, oh, it's okay, even when it's not okay, or they'll be too hard on you and you're like, dude, I know, like chill, right? So you intuitively would know who would be a good fit. It could be a family member, it could be a friend, but just think, do I really want to meet with this person on an ongoing basis? Will they show up effectively? Will they be fair but firm? And then from there you can make a decision.
What about a spouse?
I think my wife can hear me right now, so I'm just going to say maybe it depends. I mean, I think again, it depends on your relationship with your partner. I mean, some people want to have a clear separation between their work life and their personal life, and if your spouse is your accountability partner, that might be a challenge. And you're also accountable to that person for other things as well, so might not be the best fit. I have seen some people that do well with it, but on my end, I would carefully consider that because asking them is one thing, but what if you have to tell them you don't want to do that anymore? It's like I want to break up with you as a partner, but not that partner, just the
Yeah, yeah.
accountability partner, right? So I would advise most people not to do that, but you can also give it a try if you want.
I think that's fair. I think that's fair. We're getting ready to move on to our connection section, but folks, before I do that, I just want to remind you again to take a look at VSP's social media links. We've got their Facebook and their Instagram links there for you on the slide deck. Um, Staying connected to others is key when pursuing self-employment. If it's not done right, it's easy to sink into feelings of isolation, and I think we saw a lot of that during the pandemic. So we want to shift here and talk about ways to stay connected through your business and industry specific ways you can plug into a larger community. So with that in mind, let's take one last poll. We can go ahead and push that poll. As an independent worker, which of the following are barriers to seeking or securing health coverage benefits like vision on your own? Go ahead and take a second to mark your answer there, and then we will take a look at the results. Let me move this down. Okay. Oh, okay. So a lot of people are in the same boat that Terry is in, where they're covered through a spouse. Some folks benefits are expensive. Okay, all right. So most folks are kind of divided between cost and already covered. Got it. So Terry, how do you maintain camaraderie and connection with other people, coworkers and colleagues? What do you do? Do you need a social fix daily?
I'll start off by saying this. I have a somewhat large online presence because I write for Entrepreneur Magazine. I do a lot of public speaking. So I get flooded with messages, and I am not always great, or I wasn't always great at following up with them. So I had to create a system. I have a CRM of people that I need to follow up with. And I know that sounds technical, and it sounds like a very clinical way to maintain personal relationships, but I have several children as well, so like my head is like I'm often like divided between what I should be doing for work versus my personal life. So yeah, it really is just keeping track of people that you meet. And even when I go to events, I have a digital business card that I use, so it's easier to put them in these systems and just make a note to follow up, right? So it doesn't have to be very intense. It can just be very quickly like, hey, I had a great time meeting you at that event. You said this, I thought that was cool, and open the conversation up for additional opportunities. But just getting it out soon and keeping it brief, because if you spend too much time on this interaction, you can't crank out as many messages or emails as you might want to on a regular basis. In regards to your question, like, do I need a social fix? Not really, just because again, I have a large family, and I have a pretty good active community at my gym, so that's where I get my social fix. But I do notice when I'm lagging in my interaction with my audience and my peers because there's a deficit of ideas. Because to create good content, I'm a content creator, you have to ingest good content. And sometimes that content is the result of a conversation you have with someone where like you have this aha moment with them, and you're like, wow, I should share this with the larger community as well. So I'll give you an example. one of my buddies was saying, "Hey Terry, you used to make these really cool videos on social media of you walking back from the gym. Like, why'd you stop doing that?" And I was like, "Well, the reason was like it was cold outside, and my nose was running. That's why I stopped." But I realized that feedback came to me through these private conversations. Two people said that recently, so I started making the videos again. Right? So it's like you have to be in conversation with your audience, with your peers, because if you live in like this vacuum, no new ideas can come in, and therefore no new ones are going out.
Hmm. That's got to take a lot of effort, a lot of time, a lot of emotional investment. What do you think about that?
I'll say this: I play a game with myself where whenever I get a really big opportunity, I reverse engineer everything that had to happen in order for me to get that opportunity. And two things come to mind. I won't mention exactly what they are, but they're very large projects that pay a lot of money for content creation. And I have to go back like 5, 6 years ago to the relationships that were started that led to the success now. So I see it as planting seeds. It's the law of the harvest, right? The more seeds you plant, the more you're going to reap. But that's also why you have to leverage strategic patience. Because if you reach out to everyone expecting some kind of immediate return in that relationship, you're going to seem too thirsty or project lack and scarcity, and you're going to scare them away, right? So I think growing your network is important, but nurturing your network is more important because that's when people get to know you and come back and want to help you. But it is a time investment, but I just know the outcomes from it. And I know that it's lonely out there if you have no one thinking of you, no one supporting you. And as a result of that, if you do have a robust network that you're nurturing, opportunities will fall into your lap, even when you're just like on your merry way playing with your kids or something like that.
You mentioned strategic patience. I love that term. Can you elaborate on that a bit?
Yeah, I got that from my friend Dory Clark. So it's just saying like, why do I want to invest in this thing? And first of all, because pretend like 20 people DM me on on any given day. You have to look and say, okay, well, which one of these relationships seems like it could actually pan out pretty well, right? And from there, that's what you're going to nurture. But realize it doesn't have to come to fruition, this week, this month, this year, or this anything. But again, you are strategic in regards to where you put your energy in regards to maintaining these relationships. And that sounds kind of harsh, I get it because when you're younger you should be saying yes to everyone, right? You should be hanging out with everyone. You should be
Yeah,
taking every coffee break, every,
yeah.
every Zoom like meetup, whatever it is. But as you get older and more established, that's when you're like, look, I got to say no more because if you don't do that, then you can't protect the time that you need to put towards the business that you built. So early on, yeah, definitely say yes to everything. I think you should, right? Explore your curiosity and lean in with that. But as you get a bit more mature in your career as an entrepreneur, saying no becomes the ultimate efficiency hack.
I feel like that's something we need to say to our young people, our kids, our young people that are coming out of college, and even those that are coming out of high school. A lot of our young people have developed their own hustles. They've gone into this. They've poured themselves into this, and there's a surprising number of young people that are doing that. And there's this whole work-life balance thing, and so many of them are not taking, they're not exploring, they're not taking they're not doing that hungry thing that you just discussed. And I think that's one of those practical things that we need to be honest with them and say, now is when you do it. Now is when you do it. You'll figure out how to balance it properly. But I like that strategic patience explanation. Can you talk a little bit about other hacks that you have for maintaining connections, being self-employed or as a solopreneur, business owner, like a mentor, mentee kind of a thing?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't call them hacks because hack involves like you just push a button and it's all done. I think it goes back to leading with curiosity and forming powerful relationships on a personal level before transitioning to a business level. So on my end, when I go to networking events, I don't ask what you do for work. I ask what you do for fun. And by design, that just disarms people so quickly because they're excited to talk about that, right? They're like, oh, yeah, I like playing Ultimate Frisbee. Actually, I met a gentleman a couple weeks ago. He was an international Ultimate Frisbee champion. And like him just talking about that put him in the best mood. And I was like, I didn't even know that was a thing, dude. Like he went to Italy. He was like playing Frisbee there, right? So that's a thing. So I think again, that also lends itself to strategic patience and just being more savvy in how you meet people. So that I don't want to call it a hack, but it is a technique that lands very well. And it's also just like solving minor or sometimes major problems for people, right? So like going to their website and saying, hey, by the way, you spelled the wrong, right? Like easy mistake, anyone can make it. But that's how I've been able to get some of my greatest outcomes in my career. And I'll share a quick example if you don't mind. The
Please.
way that I became a journalist and entrepreneur magazine is because actually I didn't want to work on weekends anymore. I said, look, I'm done with this. And instead, one weekend, I took my daughter to a free gym class here in Brooklyn. And when I went to that gym class, Jason Pfeiffer was there. Jason Pfeiffer is the editor in chief of Entrepreneur Magazine. We have children the same age. And I was like, holy cow, this Jason Pfeiffer. Like, what the heck, right? So I introduced myself to him briefly because it was actually his birthday. And I had to interrupt him while he was making birthday plans with his wife to squeeze in there. But I got his information and I went home and I went to the entrepreneur website and I found a few things they could fix on their website to increase their revenue and their conversion rate. Sent him that video. That got passed around to their internal team. A week later, they're like, hey, can we come in and talk to you about some marketing initiatives that we have? So that's when I realized, like, holy cow, like me spending a couple hours doing a favor for this organization is what got me in the door, right? It wasn't like sending all these like cold DMs or emails. So I think if you can just take some time to just help people proactively, even something small, something very tiny, they'll be appreciative of that. And again, that could lead to some great outcomes later on as well.
One thing that you've said over and over again in different ways is do your homework. What you just described is
Yeah.
somebody who did his homework before. I can't tell you how many pitches I get as an editor that it's just clear nobody bothered to do to spend 10 minutes on our website and to even look. And so that step right there can save you a ton of time, but it also gives you the best possible way in and where you can actually create a relationship. Did you have a mentor? You mentioned that you've used a lot of newsletters, podcasts, books. Did you have a mentor? Are you serving in that role right now for anyone?
I didn't have a mentor that I talked to on a regular basis. I think that could have been a shortcut if I did, because that's why I like mentoring people now, even just do my content, because if I had talked to the right person, I guess going back 9 years ago, I would have saved myself a lot of heartache in the beginning. Just
Mm.
small things that I did that I discovered along the way that unlocked a lot of revenue and saved a lot of time. So no, I learned a lot of things the hard way, and that is what it is. Like I'm happy with where I'm at, so that's I'm not like upset about it. But in regards to direct mentorship, I mean, I spend about 10 hours a week creating content between my newsletter, between my podcast, between my social media content. So for me, that's a good way to mentor people en masse. And then my college, the University at Buffalo, I do mentor some of the football players there, just because we got connected when I was doing keynotes there. So I do mentor some of those guys, as well as my niece, who probably doesn't need my help. She's like a high performer, but she pretends like she does. So that's the role I play. And then as a consultant, if you want to call that mentoring, I do mentor entrepreneurs as well.
Wonderful, wonderful, and kudos to your work with the football players. I was mentoring a young football player. He's at Grambling now, and that's quite a that's quite an interesting adventure. Um,
Yeah.
let's talk about the challenges that you've run into. Can you talk a bit about those and what you did to resolve them?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first was just lack of confidence in my ability to deliver results. And what helped me to get through that was just taking a week off from like hustling and trying to work and saying, let's just build processes. Let's build processes. Let's build SOWs. Let's build frameworks. And just making sure the next time someone signed on with me, like the onboarding was super smooth, the execution was super smooth, the offboarding was super smooth as well. Because when you are talented, but your skills and your processes are fragmented, it still's not going to work out well, right? You can take
Mm.
someone who's less talented with better systems, they're going to get better outcomes than you will. So overcoming the fact that I couldn't just get by off raw talent, I had to develop skill. That was a huge unlock for me, and that was super helpful. Um, and I would also say like just I have several kids. It is what it is, and I love my children, but it's like even this week there were three different events I have to go to for my kids. Like Monday, one of them graduated from preschool. Wednesday, someone graduated from kindergarten. Tomorrow, my youngest daughter has something else going on. So it's like I am out of office a lot for that. And even things like working late at night, sometimes I'm just freaking tired. I can't. Working on the weekends, that ain't gonna happen. I'm going to the
Mhm.
park. So that is frustrating at times, but I've been able to use that to build my personal brand as someone who is in the fitness and someone who's a father. And it's funny because when you build your personal brand, that's how you get recognized and rewarded for who you are, not just what you do. And I'll share a fun example of that. This is going to be embarrassing, but I'm going to go for it anyways. I was at my daughter's winter recital, my 8-year-old, and my 5-year-old son wanted me to pick him up. And I'm like, Tyson, like, chill, like, I'll get you in a minute. He was too excited, so he tried like climbing me and like accidentally pulled my pants down. Luckily, underwear stayed up, so like we're good there. But he like pulled my pants down in a crowded theater, and I'm like, what the heck, dude? Like I was embarrassed, but I didn't get angry because I've been doing a lot of meditating. So I wrote about that on social media. I'm like, here's an example of how regulation can benefit you in any circumstance. So someone from the magazine Fatherly saw that and then covered me in Fatherly. And then someone from Google saw that. They're like, hey, can you come in and do a keynote on how to be a high performing parent and a professional? And I was like, sure. So all that came from my kids and not being embarrassed to talk about these events and being open about my experience. So when you show up as a whole human, you get rewarded as a whole human. And that's a huge part of my life. So that's what I talk about. And I also end up getting gigs where I talk about efficiency, like how are you that efficient, with so many kids and this fitness routine. So people see me as an example of someone who's resilient and efficient, and that lends to getting more keynote opportunities.
Would you say that people today, when they come to you for advice or when you get these opportunities that come to you, is it because that people are hungry for real information? They're hungry for the real stuff that we deal with every day, like being a parent and having your 5-year-old bored and antsy. How important is that in sharing with potential, with sharing, as your entrepreneurial life on social media or wherever? How important is it to be real?
I think in my case, it definitely benefits me because my goal is to be the personified version of who my audience wants to be, right? Someone who can sustain himself as well as a family, living in Brooklyn and still having an active social life when I want to, caring for my kids, taking care of my health. And the content that I put out, it's not how-to content. It's not like how to get speaking gigs. It's not like how to get brand deals. It's like, here's how I got a brand deal. So I share my experiences and my observations. And I think that's what they're drawn to because there are plenty of gurus, and I'm not knocking any of them, who just talk about how-to content. But it's like, that works in theory, but does it work in the wild? And did it work for you? So I have a lot of credibility when I coach people because they can just Google me and see, okay, this guy's done all this stuff, right? It's not fake. So yeah, it does help. But I think what also I appreciate it is people don't see me as just like a vendor. They see me as a partner. And for me, that's really important because for years, that's how I felt when I was a 9-to-5 employee, right? I was a cog in the wheel. There was nothing special about me except for the fact that I could do this one thing. But when someone goes on my social media and they see that I tell horrible dad jokes and, like I have all these other references that are very unique to me and they still want to work with me, I'm like, okay, cool. Like, the alignment is there both for them and me typically. So things just progress a lot easier. And it doesn't feel like work. It just feels like an exercise we're both going through.
That's wonderful. That's very practical. Thank you. How can you expand your network on social media without coming off as spammy or disingenuous?
Yeah, I mean, I think the best way to do it is, again, leverage patience. And I'll tell a quick story of how a comment led to me getting a documentary created about me as well as a paid speaking gig. I think that'll help, right? So what I would recommend for everyone listening, I'm gonna put my teacher hat on right now, is think about who you want to know or be known by. Maybe you want to get a bunch of podcasts, maybe you want to get speaking gigs, maybe you just want to find partners, and then identify 40 of these individuals who are also active on social media, and then to start commenting on their posts. Comment every time they post. Have a spreadsheet set up so every time they come in, you can comment. And in that comment, don't just say, great pros, bro. Like, don't say that. Ask a question, an intelligent question, because questions lead to conversations. And all of a sudden that conversation can lead to a Zoom meeting and then you're doing something else, right? So on my end, I wanted to get involved with this company called ConvertKit because it's an amazing platform. I won't go into the details because I want to be agnostic about tools. But I saw someone that worked there comment on social media, and I commented on her comment. That led to us DMing each other, and eventually she was like, hey, would you like for us to do a case study about you? I was like, sure, that'd be great, more coverage for me. From the case study, they're like, hey, we have this event going on in Boise. Would you like to speak there? And I was like, you guys paying? And they said, yes. I was like, okay, cool. I'll be there. See you soon, right? And then from there, my story they felt was so compelling, they wanted to make a documentary about me. So they came to my home here in Brooklyn and spent 4 days videotaping me and my family, and I got the chance to share my story. That's out now, by the way. That all came from one comment. So what I'm saying is focus on commenting first and then DMing when it feels like a good fit. And if you do that, it won't feel like a spammy outreach because it's like, oh, that's the person who always comments on my post, right? So that's the way to do it if they're actually active on the platform. If they're not, then just ask an intelligent question or ask it or give a genuine compliment about their work or their company. So I could say, hey, by the way, VSP, I signed up for your newsletter and your latest one about how important vision care is in the summer because people tend to take their glasses off and just wear sunglasses. Gosh, that was amazing. By the way, I'm wondering. There you go. Like that's all you have to do to your earlier point. Just show that you're not just throwing stuff at the wall and you are genuinely interested in connecting these people.
So practical. I was scribbling as you were writing. I like the comment first. Establish the relationship first, and before you just DM it, because I think that most people just go straight for that without realizing that's a good way to get ignored.
Yeah.
This has been a fantastic conversation. I see some questions coming in, so I want to make sure we get to those. Before I get into the Q&A, folks, just one more time, want to quickly remind you to check out VSP's white papers in our event resource section. Those will be very, very handy as you continue in your venture. So let's get to your questions. I saw one at the top. One of our guests here today wants you to go over one more time. OKR, what does that stand for?
OKR, that stands for objectives and key results. So your objective is the major goal you have for the quarter. Maybe it's to launch your speaking career. Key results are the major things you must accomplish in order for that to take place. So maybe it's like creating your speaking topic, creating a speaker reel, updating your website to have a speaker page. And then the underneath those key results, there's also initiatives, and that's what you're doing on a daily basis. So if your goal is to, let's say, create your speaker reel, some of those initiatives might be getting clips of you on stage, determining what kind of content you want to involve there, finding the right videographer or editor to create it, and determining what platform to host it on as well. So OKRs, I would definitely look into that for any business owner because too often we have like these 1-year plans and it's like you can't pivot quick enough if you have a 1-year plan, and it's hard to optimize in flight if you don't stop. So OKRs are the way that I run my business and the way that I help clients as well.
Perfect. Thank you. Another guest wants to know what kind of resources don't exist for independent workers that you think would be helpful?
I can't say what doesn't exist because I don't know everything that exists in the world, but I think there's an underemphasis on mindset. And I'm borrowing from Dr. Michael Gervais again. There's only 3 things we can train as humans, right? We can train our body, we can train our craft, and we can train our mind. But we spend a disproportionate amount of time on the first 2 and not nearly enough on the last, meaning your mind and your mindset. So on my end, I think everyone initially wants the nuts and bolts. Just tell me how to do it. Like, tell me how to get more leads or tell me how to make money. But what they don't realize is like you won't even charge effectively if your mindset's holding you back. Or when you're even doing everything right, when you hit a wall, you won't have the internal resilience to push through if you don't have a strong mindset. So that's why I really focus on helping people develop a strong, a high performance mindset as opposed to just like the how-to like business stuff, because that I feel is extremely neglected. But the tools are available, right? They're readily available. They're just drastically underutilized. So that's where I feel like I can make the highest contribution to the entrepreneur community is talking about the performance side, the resilience side, and how to push through these challenges that you are undoubtedly going to experience.
I've got a really interesting question here, and I want to I got to ask this question. You talked about your journey earlier in the call, but were you ever tempted to go back to the 9 to 5? What kept you committed to the independent work? It seems like that would be a strong temptation for a lot of folks.
Yeah, and I'll give you a real example. I'll give you my favorite one. So one thing that saved me from going back to a 9 to 5 was journaling. Because every night when I journal, I write down what I'm grateful for. And one thing that I write down often is just autonomy, over and over again, autonomy. So at one point, and thank you for asking that, about 2 years into my career as an entrepreneur, my old company called me to see if I wanted to work there again. I used to work at Adobe when I was younger. And they're like, hey, we think you'd be great for this role. There's this great raise and like you get this stock option. And I was like, wow, like that's pretty cool. Like, you're not going to be done with all this stuff, like done with begging and like the feast or famine thing. And, but then like the word autonomy was just drilled into my head so much. So I'm asking questions that you shouldn't ask when someone's reaching out for a job. I was like, do I have to come in every day? And this is like 2017. So back then, like you had to come in every day. I'm like, do I have to come in every day? Like, do I really need to do this stuff? Like, so on and so forth. So I started the interview process and I just didn't enjoy it because they were asking basic questions like, hey, do you know how to make a presentation? I'm like, does that really matter? Like, why are you asking me this stuff? Right. So that just like put me just not in the best zone to even go back to corporate. I'm not dissing anyone who works in corporate, but for me, that was just not what I wanted. And again, I didn't want to lose that autonomy. So that's why, again, it's so important to be self-aware, right? Because otherwise it's easy to chase these opportunities, which are actually distractions in disguise. But when you have a clear vision for what your life looks like, what are you doing in the morning? Like, how are you spending your day? You're like, wait, that's not aligned with it, right? So I can either change my vision, which is going to be drastic, or I can just decline that opportunity because it's not aligned and I have to stay the path. And I'm so glad I stayed the path because I respect anyone who works in corporate, but like this is the life for me, and I enjoy it.
We've got two questions that are kind of similar. So I'm gonna start with one of them and see if it takes us to the other. And I had made a note about this earlier. Is that what does it take to feel successful as an independent worker? I imagine trying to make that transition myself, and I can imagine there's apprehension. There's a lot of things, and so that emotional aspect of that transition has to be it's got to be carefully managed. So what does it take to feel successful?
I mean, I'll say this. I try not to get too excited about anything, including success. So when I'm regulating my emotions, I try to stay between a 4 and a 7. So 1 being you're like half asleep and like not excited about anything. 10 being you're like elated and all this stuff. And there were opportunities that have come my way that have been really amazing, like speaking at South by Southwest, like working in Dubai, like amazing things. But by design, I don't get too excited because that crash is just devastating, right? When you go from a 9 to a 6, it feels like you're at a 2, right? So I think success is found in the everyday moments. It's when you're able to go to your daughter's recital. It's when you're able to go for a walk, during work. It's when, wow, someone actually replied to my cold email. And you know that these actions repeated over time become a lifestyle. So that is the lifestyle I'm looking for. And that's what I deem to be success. Because if you're just looking for something else that's like, this huge house and all that stuff, what'll happen is you'll suffer from hedonistic adaptation. And what that means is the more you get, the more you want, right? So if you can't just sit there and enjoy those moments, I'll say it again, you will suffer hedonistic adaptation. And you're never going to be so satisfied. You never feel successful.
That's wonderful. Gives me a lot to think about, and it actually leads me right into my last question for you. Folks, thank you so much for your questions, but we are out of time to take more. But before I start my wrap up, I do want to give Terry one more opportunity to give us a final tip. Terry, what one nugget do you want our attendees to walk away with today? What's a piece of advice to leave with them?
Yeah, I think too often as entrepreneurs, we look for external validation and external knowledge even sometimes. But what I want to say is everything you need to be successful is already within you, right? It's already there. You're already primed. You just have to believe in yourself and take action and do 2 things. One is focus on intentionality and making daily progress, right? That's all you have to do, because even if you fail in your attempt to move forward, if you're intentional, you have a system, you know how to course correct, right? But if you're just like kind of fragmented the way that you're moving forward, it's like you don't know what's going right and going wrong. And also just think about your future self, right? Like, who do you want to be 5 years from now? Because you can get mentored by your future self if you do that correctly. What would that person be doing right now to get in the position they want to be in 5 years, right? So use your future self as a mentor. And there's this really good book by Dr. Benjamin Hardy that talks about that. And he makes a point. You're better off failing at activities that are aligned with you becoming your future self, as opposed to succeeding with activities that are aligned with your current version of yourself. So don't be afraid to fail so long as it is in pursuit of your future self, because eventually you will win.
Failing forward in a sense.
There you go.
Yeah.
There's a more
I
concise
like
way to
it.
say it.
Yeah, I like it. I like it. Okay, folks, we are almost at the top of the hour, but before we wrap up, I have just one more item to do. It's time for our prize giveaway. So you must be present at the live webinar today in order to win. And today's winner of a $250 Amazon gift card is Alfred Robinson from Michigan. Congratulations, Alfred. We will be in touch with you after the webinar to let you know how to claim your prize. This has been a wonderful, a very practical conversation. Terry, thank you so much for being here today and for sharing your insights and your wonderful practical experience. Thank you also to VSP Individual Vision Plans for sponsoring today's events, which allows us to bring all of this fantastic content to all of you at no charge. And finally, folks, please be on the lookout for an email that will include a link to the archived event. We invite you to view it again or to pass the link along to your colleagues. And with that, we want to say thank you very much for attending. This concludes our webcast.